Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution, sponsored by Jointflows. Today is quite a special episode, as it's a four-way podcast, which we've not done before. We're joined by previous guest, Adam Weeks, sales leader at Big Tin Can. And we're joined by James Bissell as well, who is the founder of Revenue Enabler. Both very vocal on LinkedIn, both very well known as well. So I'm excited to jump in. It's going to be a slightly different format to usual, whereas usually it's just me and Mick quizzing our guests. I think we might actually have a few questions thrown our way this time as well. But our listeners always are interested to hear about you a little bit first and how you've got to where you have. So who wants to go first, James or Adam?
Go on, James.
All right, I was going to say Adam because he can't get it wrong because he's been here before, right? So lead by experience. Okay, I'll kick us off. So got into sales over 10 years ago. Traditional, didn't do very well at school, didn't get any qualifications, did a bit of bricklaying and labouring and things like that, and then realised I'm not going to make much money. Although got a good tan in the summer. Winter was pretty tough. So saw an opportunity in the newspaper to go knock on a bunch of people's doors at their home and try and sell them Battersea Dogs and Cats Home and British Red Cross. Leaving very early, getting home very late, no basic salary, kind of got pretty tough skin. Realised that there were some highs and lows, and the highs were super addictive. So knew I wanted to be in sales, but didn't want to get rained on in a suit 12 months of the year. So jumped into what we call SDR today, telemarketing, and then kind of went through the traditional journey, AE, mid-market AE, enterprise AE, and then when the pandemic hit, an opportunity came from a founder who just sold his business and become an NED for a VC firm, put me forward to a sales leadership position at a HR tech company called Staff Circle. Did that for 2 years, and we grew the ARR 1,000% over that period, and then went into an enterprise sales leadership position for a company called CNET, and landed on where I am today, which is helping reps and sales teams operationalize a proven playbook so they don't have to spend years trying to figure things out. They can get there a little bit faster through what we're talking about today, how to go out and sell.
Amazing. Wow. Adam, I don't know how you're going to follow that up. Good luck, mate.
Yeah.
But he went from door to door to global sales leader, so it's going to be quite difficult, but give it a go.
Well, I've got to let him go first, I guess, and then I'll just tag along at the back. Just no, yeah. So I actually started out in sales after being in the army for British Army for 7 years. So there's your trump card that I'll play straight away.
There we go. Love it.
I'm only joking. Yeah, I actually was training to go on to work on the oil rigs out in the North Sea. That didn't happen at all. And then came across actually an ad in the job center. So I was there at the job center, stood in the queue, like, I need a job. And I actually found a company that was pretty much co-calling out of the Yellow Pages. So for some of these listeners, if you've never seen a Yellow Pages before, it's in the National History Museum. I'm sure you'll be able to Google it, but it was literally lifting a page, co-calling all those builders, merchants, all those electricians, you name it, and selling them phones. And then from there, pretty much, followed similar path to James. So went into recruitment, done telemarketing, software sales, all the way through to where now I've been at Big Tin Can for 4.5 years, selling to sales enablement marketing leaders and being able to show them how they can improve their sales and marketing efforts through enablement. So
nice.
Here I am. So, and this is my second time here, so thanks for having me back on.
Yeah.
Nice.
One was just not enough, Adam. We loved having you here.
That's right. So good. We had to do it twice. Awesome. So where should we begin?
Well, let's
say what.
Go on.
No, I was going to throw a curveball at you both. Actually, what I would like to hear, and I'm sure with you being very publicly open on building Jointflows on LinkedIn, how are things going with what is the biggest 2 challenges that you've seen so far, and what has been the 2 positive things that have come out of starting Jointflows?
Question. You want to go, Mick? Should I go?
Yeah. So I think the one of the biggest challenge we've had was around, I think we went to market a little bit too prematurely, and we didn't really have the product built for the ICP we were selling into. And I think we're finding out, and now we've established that we're like a mid-market and upper mid-market relevant for these kind of companies with like a structure in place and a due diligence process and security and all of that in place. And the solution, the first version of it, was not built for that.
Yeah.
So I think we spent about 6 months rebuilding the solution, having commercial momentum already, which essentially broke the momentum we had very early days. And now we've rebuilt, well, now like a year ago, we've rebuilt the whole solution to be enterprise ready. And now it's starting to accelerate. But yeah, like I think the thing with Jointflows is we've built Jointflows initially to solve our own issues around forecasting, collaboration, orchestration, just like sales workflows, basically from A to B. A can be like usually a discovery call and then all the way through. And I think we didn't do enough interviews before launching the product. So we did the interviews through our design partners, which was good because we had revenue kind of lingering in there. But it was brutal. Like the first 6 months were absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Shall I do one as well then, I guess?
Yeah.
One each. He asked for two, I could do one. So I guess the other one would probably be around the way in which we articulate our value prop and how we position ourselves in the market as well. We've had quite a few iterations of that in a not that long a period of time, to be honest. And the value prop's always been the same, I think, but the way in which we articulate it, I think at times was challenging because we knew what we were talking about, but finding the right language that resonates with the people who are going to be the end users or the decision makers for your product is totally different to the way we would talk about it. So there are quite a few iterations of that as well. So that was quite a steep learning curve as well, because at times I was on calls with people and they'd get it. And at times they'll be like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Oh, sorry, language. So at times I'm like, oh man, all right, then I'd get on the call with Mick and be like, mate, it didn't land. I don't know. And we use a call recorder, so be like, have a look at it. What do you think? Is there something else? And through all those conversations, I think now we're in a position where I think we're pretty spot on now.
Yeah,
it's been quite a journey to get there.
I guess you guys see it from the other side as well. Like what? Because you're speaking to commercial teams, and I'm guessing at different level of maturity. What's the journey like to better understand your value prop, your ICP, and then iterate your message along the way?
James, you're on mute. Nah, first time guest, you could tell that never would have happened to Adam.
Yeah. It's because my partner just brought the baby back and he's screaming his head off, and I was like, the listeners probably don't want to hear him absolutely going bonkers, right? He's just come back from swimming.
You can't keep using that excuse, James.
I can. I'm going to use it all the way until he moves out. Okay. All right. I need some leverage. I think it has to be. You have to be obsessed in that area. So for both roles where I've led teams, every quarter I was obsessed with listening back to call recordings and listening to what the market is saying. And it's unbelievable how, if you get obsessed in that area, you're always going to have this market ready message. Like some organizations run ICP once and then the economy changes, the market changes, competitors change, you change, you go from SMB and you go up market or whatever. They talk a completely different game. Or even if you stay in lane, let's say you stay like in SMB sales for like 5 years, everything changes all of the time. So if you're not got your ear close enough to the ground, you might be talking about A, but the market's talking about F. And surprise, surprise, people then start building new sequences every 5 minutes, or changing the permission-based opener every 24 hours, or their discovery slide just doesn't seem to be landing, but it landed 2 quarters ago. But the reality is the words on screen, the words that are coming out of the reps' mouths are no longer top of mind. So listening back to that and saying, well, I have these 3 personas. What are they talking about today? And how can I be seen as a trusted advisor so that when I pick up a call, when I am in the first 30 seconds of that cold call, they know I'm a seller. but they also think, hey, this dude could slip into my shoes and do
Yeah.
my role because he talks how I talk internally. And that I've seen as being the difference between reps like having super low level conversions and reps just like creating an unfair advantage in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've
I
hit
don't
the
know if you
nail on the
guys
head there.
see that as well.
Yeah, I think the question, and maybe one for Adam, because you're in the enablement space, like how often does that iteration cycle happens? Because like James pointing out the fact that people are going a little bit rogue and then they're doing their own thing on their side, and then like how much of it needs to be individual and how much of it then needs to go and then roll up to the org?
I think, yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example of sort of that message changing, and it happened to me midway through a deal that we lost because and I think, to be honest with you, it came back to, and yes, people lose deals. For those that are watching on LinkedIn, it sounds like everyone's winning deals, but that's not true. Like we lost it because they brought, this company brought in a CRO, and he's talking about these two words I'd never heard before, and it was correlation and causation. I was like, what is that? And how does that align to enablement? And it was just blowing my mind. And if we had started hearing that a bit more, I think if we were able to come to the meeting with that sort of messaging, to your point, James, like understanding what is being said on calls. Well, this was thrown at us in the last minute. I was like, never heard of this before. How do we even show this? And then we've taken that and started using it in outreach and conversations and in discovery calls. And people are like, well, that makes sense. Yeah, I can't show what I'm doing. There is no direct correlation between my efforts, what I'm doing as a enabler, to impact the sales team. I can't show it. And then when you start, and that's starting to resonate with so many people. And and again, if it hadn't come down to having that call recorded and read and listening back to it, I think we'd still be talking about something completely different. And yeah, so like that's a real life example that happened, and it threw all of us off. Like even some other people that were on the call were like, yeah, we hadn't come across that. But that was going from mid-market to like proper true blue chip enterprise talk. And I was just the gray man. I stood in the middle like, oh,
Yeah.
what's happened here? But I think, taking that and then sort of sitting down with, whether it be marketing or sales leaders, and saying, look, we're hearing these words coming from our prospects and our customers' mouths. We now need to start pivoting with these buzzwords or whatever it might be. And I think that lands on the C-suites like desk. Like they have to start listening more and be involved more to then help the guys and girls on the front line who are running into these cadences that they're changing every 5 minutes, or they're deciding that they're going to not use a permission-based opener and pitch slap you as soon as you pick up the phone. So I think it comes, it comes from all sides. However, I think, having people take the time out of their day to listen to what people are saying would help. Back to, you mentioned about having a call recording software. You went back and listened to that call, which has helped you change your messaging. So yeah, it's tough.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, it was interesting, you mentioned about the C-suite there. How do you change your language? And I guess to all three of you, even Mick inclusive in this now, that is an open forum. How do you change your language depending on the persona of the individual you're speaking to? So, like above the line, below the line is very normal. Like everyone knows different languages for this, but how are you determining what language you should be using?
I think it comes back to your prep before you go and speak to that individual, right? So what do they care about? What do they do? I mean, we have all these tools these days to go and find out what they care about. You can just go into LinkedIn and type in a hashtag of CRO, for example, and there'll be people on there telling you what CROs care about. So yeah, for me, it's like truly understanding what they care about. I'm not going to swear, so you don't have to edit this, unlike yourself. But yeah, but like I think it comes back to how can I align what we offer to what they really care about, and does that make sense? Not that I use that word all the time, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say the people you get delegated to the people you sound like. So if I'm calling up the CRO and I'm talking, cold call connect rates, they're not going into really tough board meetings every quarter, communicating to their investors and their chairman and the board to say cold call connect rates are down, because they're like, what do you mean? Like, we want to talk about velocity and what are we doing to turn the 2 quarters around that we can see that we don't have enough pipeline coverage for, that kind of stuff, right? So I think if you want to go up, like you said there, like the power line, like above the power line, you might have VP, SVP, C-suite. Below you might have head of, director, management level. Like, just know where you're playing, and like business acumen is so important. So like, go and read stuff, go and subscribe to different blogs or newsletters and things like that, and be conscious of the words that you're using when you're going into conversations. If it's an enterprise org and I'm going into a SVP conversation, I'm pulling up the annual report and I'm looking for language inside of there that they're going to be communicating, with their peers internally, but also with the board. And otherwise you'll find, like, and you guys might have seen this, I definitely saw this a load of times when I was a lot earlier in my career, and I never figured out why until more recently. I'm cold calling the CTO, and the CTO is like, hey, this sounds kind of interesting. I'm going to introduce you to Bob on my team, who's like 7 layers down. And I'm like, oh, sweet, right? The one thing is, I'm like, cool, like I'm getting a meeting. But the second thing is, I'm going to struggle to get back up to that guy because he just doesn't see me as an important person to spend time with. But there might be something there for someone else in the org.
Yeah.
That's kind of knowing who you're speaking to is, what I would say. And I agree with that.
It's hard though, because you're tempted to create momentum, and often the momentum comes from people with more availability, and people with more availability have got less strategic responsibility. And it's a bit of a false positive. You're like, yeah, I've got all this momentum in my deal, but you're speaking to people who can't make things happen. So how do you balance this out? Like what's the right ratio of, I need to convince users as well as decision makers, but I need decision makers to go and help me convince users, but I don't want to then end up there.
Yeah. So I got 2 things to talk about there. One, I just wanted to, because I didn't want to interrupt Adam, but we were speaking a minute ago about messaging. And we're talking about like out of date messaging that's no longer being spoken about. There's also talking about stuff that actually the market isn't ready for right now. So I've been doing a project for a CEO at the moment I'm doing some consulting work for, and part of it is aligning sales and marketing and having that like aligns message. So I started to look at like all of the usual suspects websites that we all probably use or have used in the past. Every single one of them above the fold on their website has AI in there. And most people don't understand AI unless you're in that organization selling that tool. So let's talk about all like the sales enablement, sales engagement platforms, right? They've all got AI and they think it's the future, and it might be the future, but the problem is your buyer isn't fully up to date with how to leverage AI or really understand it. So you kind of scaring them a little bit. So there's kind of being like a message that's too old and out of date, but it's also like this future message that people aren't ready for understanding, which is why that exercise is so important. So I just wanted to touch on that because Adam was so spot on there. To answer your question, there is like, I'm a big fan of Medic, and champion is having a good champion is so important. But a lot of people think that champion has to be someone that's super experienced and right high up the hierarchy. They could be like a mid-level manager that has their ear close to the ground, and the economic buyer like sees a lot of great things in that person, trust them because they're a domain expert in whatever field. But you might miss that person because you've gone too high to the SVP who's got power and influence and a connection with the economic buyer. But Johnny or Sarah, who's the frontline sales manager, who's like the go-to person for that space, might have a better relationship internally around this topic than the other person. So I don't think you can look at a hierarchy and say, hey, like I have to go to that person. I think you need to find like where's the pain center in that organization and who has something to gain if we bring Jointflows into the organization. That person that's going to be really receptive to a message, and then they're selling for you because they got something to gain.
Yeah. All right. We're opening up the topic around discovery calls then. There's a big, everybody speaks about it, and then we are quite vocal about continuous discovery. Like I believe that you can't discover anything or everything within the first call, and then gradually, as you go through the decision process, like you go and discover more and more specific things, basically. And I see a lot of advice on LinkedIn from sales gurus, self-proclaimed sales gurus saying, like, no, I've been in sales for 3 months, I know it all. Like, what's your take on two things, discovery and then sales gurus?
Adam, do you want to go? Adam, do you want to go first?
Well, I just go get my my cannon to absolutely start shooting all these people down.
Be careful, because I'm one of them, so you're not
I'm not going to go and preach something that I don't do, and I think that's one of the talking of like sales gurus, right? So don't get me wrong, there is some really, really good stuff out there that has helped me in my career. However, what you then typically see is then you start seeing other self-proclaimed gazillionaires start rewriting that content and branding it as their own, and they've never done it before. So prime examples I see a lot of is people who have been an SDR, for example. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I've been one myself, before you go and shoot me, who now sell courses on how to get promoted to an AE, and they've never been an AE before. So how can, and I actually think that's really disrespectful to SDRs themselves, because they genuinely do want to go and maybe they do want to go and be an AE, but to me, I want to go and buy maybe something from a course or learn from someone that's actually gone and done it, right? I'm not going to go and buy something fictional that that might get me there. It actually could send me in the complete wrong direction. So be careful what you read. No, I was going to say, just be careful. Take everything with a pinch of salt, is what I'd say, until you go and try it yourself.
Yeah, so I'm completely aligned with you, but just to play devil's advocate, let's say we had an individual like this, an SDR, never been promoted to an AE, sells this course that allows you to be able to do this as an enabler of this goal. And let's say they've got a great track record. Then it's okay, right?
I wouldn't say it's okay. I think you'd have to tread carefully as to do your due diligence, is what I'd say. If there's people on their website saying, oh, this is amazing, this has really helped me, go and contact those people and actually ask them their true opinion on it. So they could have a great record, they could have on LinkedIn, President's Club winner, all, 100% here, 200% there. But they've still not been promoted, but they don't want to be an AE, they want to stay as an SDR, which I know a couple of them, and they've been an SDR for 10 plus years, which is, that's fair enough. I would do my due diligence on some of these people that recommend those type of courses, because I'd go and ask them before I bought anything. Hence why I don't sell courses. I'd rather, although I might do, who knows? I'll drop in the link below. But no, I think just be careful with that sort of stuff. When it comes to sales gurus on LinkedIn, some great stuff, but there's a lot of crap.
I think context is everything, right?
Yeah.
If we follow a rep that's been at Salesforce for 10 years and he's talking about X, Y, and Z strategies, he's probably got an outbound BDR, he's probably got an inbound SDR, he's probably got a sales engineer and a commercial finance team helping him build and structure, proposals. And what he does might be super successful for someone that's got a brand like Salesforce and a massive category that's very well educated, versus you guys building Jointflows. Like, imagine you weren't in the roles you're in, you were SDRs at your company. Context is completely different. And you're going to fail on the first play if you implement their playbook. So I think making sure that the context is there. If I'm going to follow people on LinkedIn, there's nothing wrong with buying courses. I've bought so many courses. I've spent thousands of pounds over the years on having my own coach, because I want to fail fast and get real-time feedback if I'm doing something good or bad. I'm not an expert in every area. Like, I'm reaching out to people asking for branding advice at the moment and feedback and like marketing operations, so that I don't spend years trying to figure this stuff out. Nothing wrong with that. Just context is everything. Otherwise, you'll go and spend a lot of time, not so much the money, it's more the time that you go and take to implement this stuff, and then realize, actually, this is for a completely different context.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, what really annoys me is the P Club, president clubs, winners, and all of that. And they're really good for a couple of years. P Club once, P Club twice, 3 times, and then you put them in a different company and they crash, like, and then into a third company and they crash again. And a lot of the success was to do with right time, right place, right technology, but really important, like right territory as well. Oh, I've been given this segment, I've been given this territory, and then it's just take orders, really. Like, and they give advice on LinkedIn, they're very vocal. And I debunk them all the time. It's like, where's the results? Like, just show me, because I don't get it. Like, how do you like identify this without getting into that state of, it's too late now. I've spent so much time trying to consume the content, trying to learn from them. Like, is there a trigger, or is there a characteristic on their profile where you can identify these things?
I mean, I talk to a lot of people at the moment who are like out of work, and they're like, hey, I need to go and find somewhere to get a new job. And like some of the time, when I say like, hey, why are you in market? They're like, I'm so sick and tired of getting no help, no training, no coaching.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, I want to go and get a new job. I'm like, well, forget about like the money for a minute. Like, go and find someone that you feel confident's gonna be obsessed in you. Because we come to work, especially in sales, to earn, but also to learn. And I think both have to be there. And I think the learning drives the earning part. And I remember back to some roles where it took me a little bit longer to figure things out. I got pretty much no help, which is why I started to invest externally. And then the roles when I did, like, it was, the acceleration was bonkers. So I think for a trigger perspective, I'd be going out and looking at people's profile that matches your context. For example, have they got repetition working in scrappy startups in an undefined category versus they've spent the last 10 years working at Salesforce or, in cybersecurity, which is just exploding and has been for a little while. You could, like, little things like that will make it pretty obvious that you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. I always feel like the learning part in some parts of it, at least, are down to the leadership within the business, depending on the type of business that you're in. Especially when I think about SDRs, a lot of the time it's, their first or second job really into the workforce after leaving education. So they don't necessarily know where to go in order to discover what they don't know, right? You only know what you know. And so I think I can't stress the importance of having a good leader who's able to identify proactively where the gaps are in this individual's knowledge and what they need to learn and how they can actually bridge that gap as well. And part of that, for me at least, or the way I used to do it, was a lot about target attainment, not target attainment in terms of your monetary target, but target attainment in terms of what are your goals? What are you trying to do in the next 12 months? What are you trying to do in the next 18 months? 36 months. Okay, let's map that out. How can you actually get there? Well, this is where you are right now. This is where you're trying to get to. This is where the gaps are. And this is how I can support you in getting there. But if you're an individual, who is looking for a job, let's say, how are you able to identify that as part of your interview process? Is quite difficult because a lot of people give lip service. I can't tell, I've had countless interviews in my career where people say things that is not true. One classic example was the CEO of the company told me they were 96% inbound and had a 99% renewal rate. And I was like, this is going to be easy money. And obviously wasn't the case.
Was he smoking crack by any chance?
I guess we'll never know.
Oh, wow. That's
to Mick's point, we're always in discovery, right? I think a lot of people turn up to interviews. I've hired a lot of people over the years, and a lot of people turn up to interviews and they just answer questions. I'm like, dude, would you do this on a discovery call? If I'm going to go and put like a $5,000 lead in front of you, would you just turn up and, let's say Adam was the prospect, I'd just sit there and let Adam ask me questions and just answer them. And then what's your next question? Answer them. I wouldn't, right? I'd be saying, hey, that's a really interesting question, Adam. What made you ask that? And I'd be doing discovery and I'd be listening. I'd be paying attention. I'd be present. When you go into an interview, your job is to sell. We're always selling, right? And if I don't want to walk into an environment, let's take coaching, for example, because I could talk about this pain for hours, but let's say I'm walking into an interview and I'm super frustrated. I'm getting no help at work and I'm super passionate about going places. The only questions I'm really going to be obsessed in that conversation, I'm going to be pushing that VP of sales on, is talk me through the coaching plan for one of your reps on your team. How did you identify that there was an opportunity there? And what is it that you're doing every week to make sure that we follow through and that area is improved upon over the next 30 days. And you'll just see they'll just like deer in headlights. And that's your ticket just to get up and thank them for their time and move on, right? And I think a lot of people are worried to have that conversation because they're out of a job or they want to get out. But you're only going to walk into the exact same situation, because I'm going to say something that's not going to make me any friends, but frontline managers are dead. If we want to talk about anything that's dead, the problem isn't cold calling, not emailing, whatever. It's that line managers are dead. They get promoted for all the wrong reasons, tenure. I've got sorry, Adam, I'm going to bring it up again. I've got a 5-month-old baby, but when I, a couple of years ago, became a sales leader, I was given 8 babies. When you're a rep, it's all about you, right? You get up, you do what you want, what time you make cold calls, how many calls you take, blah, blah, blah. When you become a manager, it's no longer about you. Your time usually is in the evening for work. Between 9 and 5 is about making them great. And the reason that people are continuously recycling reps, they've got really low attrition in the sales organization and things are starting to stall, is because they're too busy in internal meetings. But your only job as a line manager, if you actually want to build a great team, is to make them elite.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interviewing, like, make sure that you're pressing in those areas if that's important to you. If compensation plan not changing every 5 minutes is important to you, press in those areas. If like retention, to your point there, like 99%, hey, talk me through why customers would leave them. What's that 1%? Can you talk me through those accounts? What are you doing to make sure they don't, like, if those are the areas that are important to you, don't just turn up to interviews and just answer questions.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Dig in a bit deeper.
Do you think they're dead because they don't have the right training and coaching, or do you think they're dead because the job is just not warranted? Like there's no need for that person in the middle.
No training or coaching. Like if you think it's bad as a rep, you're not getting any training. Wait till you get promoted into a leadership position. You get literally none. I think I've had one bit of training that the organization has provided. Everything else I've had to go out and find out myself through mistakes, through getting burned.
So true.
And,
yeah, that's so true.
But it's the organization, like from the CEO down, they should be holding every layer accountable to present up. Mark Roberge talks a fantastic job about this in the sales acceleration formula. When he was CRO of HubSpot, he talks about like making sure every layer in the sales hierarchy communicates back to him what coaching plans he's put in place for his and her reps. So it has to start at the top and be cascaded down, and it has to be like as important as anything else that you're doing in the sales organization.
Very true.
As,
Most
as
people
well,
get.
some of the,
Oh, sorry,
I was going to say, I think as well, some of those people have been too reliant on software as well, right? So they don't get the coaching and training, but then they go and think that a piece of software that'll help them. Like how many times do you see in groups, whether it be on WhatsApp or on LinkedIn or on a Slack channel, asking, "Oh yeah, I've got these 8 reps. I'm looking for a coaching tool for them so they can coach themselves." Well why? Why do you need that?
Yeah.
You've got 3.
What are you doing the other 40? What are you doing for the other 40 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
It's probably drinking too much coffee, right?
Yeah. Well, they're out playing golf. That's what they're doing. But no, it's the two. Some people are way too reliant on software to help them do that. Because the thing is, the software isn't going to give them the answers that a human interaction is going to give them. And I think back to your point that you mentioned, James, about AI being scary for some people and being some people being open to it. We got AI in our platform now when it comes to an enablement solution, but we don't talk about AI. We talk about it being an educational resource and using other systems to educate people so that people don't feel scared and whatever else. So yeah, I think back to your point, James. Yeah, absolutely. There is no training and coaching done enough for reps, and then when it comes to the managers, they just rely on their dashboards and KPI dashboards and software to help them get out of that hole.
And I've even got a couple of reps in my sales university that they pay coaching themselves because their manager's never been in sales before.
Yeah.
These are public companies that, like, on their employer brand positioning on their career site, they talk a really great game, but reps at like super low level, like I didn't get any feedback, and they think it's either because their manager never been in sales so doesn't know what to say, or they're terrified they're going to give them bad feedback and they're going to leave. This person's like, I'm dying for someone to give me some feedback.
Yeah.
But because no one's teaching managers to how to hold a one-on-one, how to set goals, how to hold people accountable, how to give feedback, how to receive feedback from your people. Surprise, surprise, they just don't do it because they don't think about doing it, or they're uncomfortable doing it because they've never been taught. It's like cold calls. People are terrified to make a cold call because they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I love making them. You guys probably love making them because you know how to do them.
That's what we do. But I think so on the cold call side, I think we just got comfortable with it. It's like I hated the first cold calls. I hated it. And eventually it doesn't really matter. It's like, you're asking girls out and then you just get rejected until eventually someone says yes. And
Is that what happened to you growing up?
No,
You just asked a bunch of girls that got rejected a lot of times.
Fortunately, I'm not in this position.
I've never had that problem.
I've seen that.
Mainly because I stay home and I work hard, really. But that's a different story. But like to your point, I think the problem with first line managers specifically is they get promoted to become super reps. And it's not really about coaching, it's about jumping on every single deal that the team has to go and unblock these deals. There's no, like James, like 100% agree with everything you've been saying about they're not trained to coach, they're not trained to teach, they're not trained to create career paths, they're not trained to identify coaching opportunities and so on and so forth. And then to your point, Adam, they kind of plug that gap through technology. Oh, that's cool, I've got an HR software that does the one-to-one. Oh, that's cool, I've got recording software that triggers coaching on specific keywords. Like, how do we change this? Like, do you hire people? Is the best way to do that not to hire internally, basically, or to promote internally and to get people that are outside already line manager coming in? Like, what's your take on this?
I think it talks really nicely to what Adam's company does. So I think every part of the organization in general, but let's just talk about sales or just revenue. Every layer of the sales organization should have a training program, either one that is built internally or they bring in external people to come in and deliver it. But like recently I came across this research, it's called the forgetting curve, where 90% of training is forgotten about in the first 7 days.
Yeah.
Which is why I really built my membership business, is because reinforcement is so important. So like tools like what Adam says, like Big Tin Can, if we're not teaching people and then continuously reinforcing it, how can we get frustrated when reps don't put metrics in the CRM, or when next steps aren't well documented in the CRM, or when we're not telling fantastic customer stories on discovery calls that inspire change? Because if we teach it once, like if I go to the gym and just do a couple of bicep curls, as much as I wish it was true, like I'm not going to have the biggest arms in the world, right? I have to go probably not every day because probably a little bit too much, but you get my point. I have to continuously work that muscle group, and then over time things happen, and then I can continually maintain that. So I think firstly, we need to get obsessed with training our people and building the right training programs for their level and their experience, and then reinforcing it through coaching and, learning platforms like Big Tin Can, and holding people accountable to go and do that as well.
Whose responsibility is it? Because I love all our
Everyone's
clients,
responsibility.
but which department? Because someone has to drive that. I think that's one of the points that James was bringing up, is you end up having pods of initiatives with no like nothing is consistent throughout. And so my take on this is, I don't believe that sales enablement as a department should be finding enablement opportunities, because I think that you need to have done the job, I think, to some extent, to understand what the problem is. I don't believe that RevOps should be doing these things as well, because they don't touch deals. They administrate the deals, but they don't touch the deals. I don't believe that reps should be doing it, because they're very biased and someone's weakness can be someone else's strength. So where is it? Where's the drive coming from?
2 points. If it's org-wide, then it has to be the CEO, and he has to hold all of his execs accountable for it, and then it cascades down. If we're just talking about sales, it has to come from the CRO or SVP of sales or whoever it is, and that person has to have a metric that they're accountable to go and communicate to the board. Depending on the org, it might have like chief people officer or CHRO that also owns part of that, because it's a learning initiative. but I think it has to come from someone that's been through the journey, but also like the compensation plan. If I want to drive behaviors, I put it into the comp plan, and surprise, surprise, I get more 2-year deals if I want 2-year deals if they're going to get kickers or accelerators, right? If I take it out, it's probably not going to happen. So like there has to be some behavioral change, and whatever behavior I want to drive in my sales organization, I just put that into something that they're not going to forget about, like a comp plan. I have to own it as the revenue leader, and then I have to hold the different layers accountable for it. Otherwise, it just gets forgotten about.
Adam, what's your view?
Well, I was just going to give you an example. So there's a fintech company that's moved forward with Big Team Can, and part of why they bought the solution was that the CRO there was actually, as part of the new financial year, was actually having training and coaching his reps as part of his remit. So the whole job spec for him was been completely rewritten. So between him and the enablement team that they've got, they had to have something to start coaching their reps, because he was now being accountable and held by the board to help coach and sell, because he's in a very, very, very competitive market with competitors popping up almost every month offering something very similar. So for them, the way they thought about having their reps as being as sales ready as they possibly could, he needed to make sure that the enablement team and himself was enabling his reps as best he could. So that was a new thing that I've seen this year, is that there is, especially when it comes to like learning platforms, it's the sales leaderships that are now being involved in these type of tools that are being bought for companies, because it's having a direct impact on their sales team, especially when it comes to like onboarding new people. They're seeing a massive, well, just over the last 3 months, we've seen people come back to us and say, look, we've been able to reduce our first time to sell for the first time in our company's history, because we've actually had sales leadership, enablement, or the training department working together for the first time. So yeah, I mean, it is something that some companies won't agree to it, because they'll think that the enablement part of the business has to do it all, or it's HR that has to do it all, or it's training. But those who are smart and decide to team up together will be streets ahead in years to come.
Yeah.
And you said ready then as well, which is so important, because we're not doing heart surgery as salespeople, but salespeople also drive the economy. So you wouldn't go into surgery knowing that that person isn't qualified to cut your chest open and operate on your heart, right? I mean, NHS is questionable, so you're not 100% sure if they have or not. But you know, if you went private and you're paying for it, you definitely expect them to be qualified, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I always tickles me is that nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. So how can we get like super frustrated that reps don't make it, or they take longer to ramp, if we're not going to train and coach them and reinforce those skills? If we're just going to give them a laptop and a phone and say, go sell, here's your territory. You might get like 5% make it, but majority of them are going to fail.
Yeah. How do you make that period optimal, the onboarding phase? Because when you factor in the average tenure of a rep versus their ramp up time, there's a lot of how do you say it, like wasted bullets, you know, like they're sitting on calls and learning on calls, they're cutting their teeth on actual deals, and they're learning in this way, which can come at a price to the company. So how do you set up for optimal success with this regard?
I think hiring is important, like having the right characteristics for your context is important, and qualifying aggressively in the interview process, because that will help the early days. But to Adam's point, again, readiness, like having readiness assessments, like being obsessed with teaching the rep about the customer profile. You know, I always talk about like persona matrix, like what does the persona do every day? What are they accountable for? If you were to put their shoes on, what would a typical day in their life look like? What are the ripple effects of that problem? Who are they, aligned with internally? Like teaching them about the customer, then teaching them about the products, and then say, right, Adam, it's time to make some cold calls. Let's do a bunch of role play and let's certify you to go and make those cold calls. Still might get it wrong on the first one when you go out there, but at least we know that Adam's ready. So like having technology that can help you ramp reps and certify that they're ready to go and execute that play. Like I've got reps I speak to all the time. They're like, I've got a demo and I've never done a demo before. And that's okay. Like we're all going to do it for the very first time. Talking about the training you've had. Oh no, they just sent me like a gone recording of somebody else doing a demo, and then they've set me up with some. I'm like, geez, that's going to be tough.
Absolutely.
Guys,
Also,
we're at time. So Adam, we just finished.
I was literally just going to say, and also, I think one of the biggest problems with onboarding is the onboarding is too long.
Yeah.
It's too fluffy.
Mm.
Like for an SDR, I think you should be cold calling after the 3rd week of joining a company. And same with an AE, right? Just back to James's point, forget about the product. Who cares about what we do, how successful we are?
Yeah.
We need to go and understand why we were here in the first place, who we're helping. Let's learn that first, and then, as James mentioned, the product can come next. So that's what I was going to finish with.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. I think the problem with onboarding is it's front loaded and it's out of context. Like, and I think that's kind of the norm, right? Is you sign a contract, you get your first day, you've got 2 months of onboarding, and you have to digest the entirety of everything that belongs to everything from HR to, like requesting holiday, dealing with deal desk and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and like what you guys do, right? Show them like how the customers actually buy, and like use data to support it rather than saying this is our opinion.
Yeah.
Right. Like actually give them the hard facts and show them like when it digresses, this is what it looks like, and that's okay. And this is how you kind of get it back on track, how you course correct. Otherwise, reps go out there just assuming that the sales process goes from discovery, demo, proposal, negotiate, close one, and they're like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm in this stage, but we're not going that way. We've gone like down here somewhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That doesn't make any sense. What do I do now?
Isn't that company you're describing that Hitish was we're going to work at the 99% renewal rate?
That's it. Yeah,
92%
those are the ones that
close
just fly
rate?
through. Yeah. You
Yeah,
close your
yeah.
eyes and the deal's gone. That's it. Blink.
There you go. Guys, it's been great having you guys on, and I really like this format. I don't know about you, Mick, but it's great having 4 people on as well, and a few questions thrown our way. But we do have a wrap-up question, which we couldn't pass up just because there's 4 of us, and I'll let James go first because Adam's answered it before the last time he was on, but he might have a new answer this time. But for your career to date, what is your favorite memory and why?
Oh, favorite memory and why? That's a really hard question for me to answer. Probably. Oh, that's a tough one. Adam, do you want to go? Let me think.
A buffer of having
Most-
another guest with him.
What was the most memorable memory year to date, would you say?
And why? Yeah, your favorite
Why?
memory and why
Favorite memory.
for your whole career. Doesn't need to be in
Oof.
sales. Could be from the army. Could be whatever.
Or one of the podcasts you've been to, Adam.
Yeah. There you go. There's my answer. Being on this podcast first time round. Besides that, no, I think my most favorable memory, I guess, would be is closing my first deal here at Big Tin Can. Is moving up in from that sort of mid-market inside enterprise. It was a big step up for me personally, and taking that from a cold meeting all the way through within a 3-month period and closing my first six-figure deal was very memorable for me. So, and I've still got the bottle of champagne that has been drunk sat in the room next door to me. So
Nice.
Amazing.
I'd say that for now.
I think
to you,
James,
James.
still thinking?
No, I think so. I think as we become managers for a reason, right? And I think probably my last company, when I knew it was okay to leave and go and start what I'm doing now, when I was in a deal review with a rep, and when I'm asking him, hey, this deal looks really good, but what's your plan if this happens? And they would answer it the way I would, versus 10 months before, they really struggled to connect the dots. And that was a really proud moment for me, that I know that rep had gone on such a journey over that period of time, that they were coachable. They came with an open mind to every conversation. And over time, they just became more and more self-aware. Kind of, you get to that feeling as a manager, then you want to retire yourself at some point to say, these guys, I'm still going to stick around, but they probably don't need me that much, because they can execute live in the conversation because they're so self-aware through coaching. And I think it's such a powerful thing. So probably the proudest.
Nice.
Amazing. Great memories from you both. Thank you for sharing. Well, look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Adam, second time round. Don't be a stranger. You can always come back for a 3rd time as well. And James, it would be great to have you on for a 2nd time as well. But really enjoyed myself. I'm sure our listeners are going to get a lot from this conversation as well. Before we do wrap, however, I do have one announcement. Jointflows will be going live on Crowdcube on Monday, the 24th of June. And a disclaimer, don't invest unless you're prepared to lose all the money you invest. This is a high-risk investment. And we've been forced to say that part because that's the disclaimer, right? So do feel free to pay us a visit on Crowdcube, learn more about what we're doing. And yeah, if you believe in us, invest in us. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it. Until next time, guys, this has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.